Hello everyone, myself Ketan Bausa, Assistant Professor in Engineering College, Ahmedabad. In today's session, we discuss about a communication model and what exactly the communication model is and how the communication model is playing an important role in information technology in terms of IoT or in Internet of Things. Now, there are a number of communication model that we will see in this today's session, but first we see the request response communication model. Means when we have to communicate the data from request to respond communication, then how actually this model is work. Request response is a communication model in which the client sends the request to the server and server respond to the request. Means the request is respond to the communication model in that client send the request to the server. Means in this particular channel, client sends some request to the server side and also getting some acknowledgement from the server side. When the server received our request, it decided how to respond. Fetch the data, retrieve the data, respond the data, retrieve the resources representations, prepare the response, and then send the response to the client. So basically, if you're talking about the request response communication model, in this communication model, we have to go with a service-based response. Means when the server received the request, it decided how to respond the data, fetch the data, retrieve the resource representation, prepares the response, and then some response to the client. As you can see in this particular diagram, as you can see on that particular side, you can see the client side and the server side, and this one is the resources. You can see that in the client side sends a request to the server. Fine, means the client sends some request to the server. Server receives that particular request, then study what exactly the request or what exactly the client wants. Receive the request from the client, process the request, looks into the request, fetch, respond, prepare the response, and then send response to the client. And for that, it requires some resources, then it use some resources, and then particular services provided to the client. So this particular protocol is called as a request response communication model. Now next, we see the next model which play an important role in also communication model. It's a public subscribe communication model. Publish and subscribe communication model. Public and subscribe is a communication model that involves the publisher, broker, and consumer. So basically, in this type of communication model, we have to involve one broker to connect the two parties. I give you a simple example of the broker. Suppose if you want to purchase a house in some area, then see, as a human being, we are not visit each and every home or each and every flat and ask each and every one about the availability of the home or availability of the flat. But if we ask to the broker, which have the same work to to manage the number of flats and block and provide the services for the same area, then definitely he have a more than 2 to 3 resources, and with help of the resources, very fastly and quickly they provide us flat. And definitely they get some charges. They charge for this particular services, but definitely they provide us services. The same concept is applied over here. In terms of publish subscribe communication model, here publish subscribe is a communication model that involves the publisher, broker, and consumer. Publishers are the source of data. Publisher sends the data to the topic which are managed by the broker. Publishers are not aware of the consumers. So in terms of a publish subscribe communication model, publishers are the source of data. Publishers send the data to the topic which are managed by the broker, and publishers are not aware about the consumer. So it is about a publish subscribe communication model. Consumers subscribe to the topic which are managed by the broker. When the broker receives the data from the topic or from the client side, from the publisher, it sends the data on the subscribed consumer. So basically, in terms of the public and subscribe communication model, we have to follow this strategy. We have to fetch the data, we have to respond the data, we have to manage the data. But here, between the two parties, one broker is work. The broker is really used to manage these two things. Here you can see the diagram. publisher and broker, and here are the consumers. Send the request to the particular topic. Now, what exactly the work of broker? Broker are generally sends the data. Broker are generally check the data availability of the which type of services actually publisher want. Broker are check and analysis the availability of the same side on the consumer side. If the consumer availability or we can say that a publisher demand will match, according to that broker will be connect the consumer and publisher. Here you can see that the topic 1 is connected with the consumer 1 and consumer 2, and similarly the topic 2 is connected with the publisher and consumers 3. So here we can see that it is a publish subscribe communication model. Here the broker is playing a main or important role to provide the connectivity between the two people. Clear everyone? Okay. Now, next we will discuss a push-pull communication model. Now, what is push-pull communication model? Push-pull is a communication model in which the data producer push the data to the queue. The queue is one type of memory, or we can say that a temporary storage, basically. And the consumer pull the data from the queue. Push-pull is a communication model in which the data push the data to the queue, and the consumer pull the data from the queue. And producer do not need to be aware of the consumer side. Queue help in decoupling the messaging between the producer and a consumer side. So here you can see that in push-pull communication, here the queue is playing an important role part of providing the communication between the two persons, client and publisher, or we can say that a client and a server. So queue help in the decoupling the messages between the producer and consumer side. So here you can see that the queue is also act as a buffer. Buffer means what? It is generally used to provide the temporary storage. It is generally used to provide the temporary services. So queue is also act as a buffer which help in situations when there are a mismatch between the rate at which the producer pulls the data and the rate at which the consumer pulls the data. So basically here we are talking about the pull and push based concept. Publisher and consumer. Send the message to the queue is already there. Message pusher to the queue and message pulled from the queue in the consumer side. So basically queue is play a main role. Here the pushing concept is there and here is the pulling concept is there. So basically buffer or queue is play as a buffer role, means it's passing the data from publisher to the consumer side. Now next we discuss about the important topic of exclusive pair communication. Now the question arises in our mind, what is exactly the exclusive pair communication model? See, exclusive pair is a bidirectional fully duplex communication model that use a persist connections between the client and server. So basically exclusive pair communication model play an important role to provide a bidirectional connection and the fully duplex communication model between the client and server. Once the connection is set up, it remains open until the client sends the request to close the connection. Once the connection is set up, it remains open until the client sends the request to the close to the connection. Client and server can send the message to each other after connection is set up. So once the connection is set up, then client and server can send the message to each other after the connection set up. So basically it's a bidirectional way. It's a handshake based approach to provide the connections and communication in the both the side. So here you can see in the diagram the client and server. Client and server are working in the same concept. Request to set up the connection first of all. Then first query is sent from client to the server side. Now server respond particular expecting the request. Then message from client to server and message from server to client, means whatever the data or whatever the communication is establishment between the client and server, it will be handshaking over here. And a connection close request is sent by the client, then server is also responding in the same direction. So basically here you can see that we are talking about the bidirectional way to provide the connections between the source, or we can say that the client and server. So it provides the bidirectional way to provide the connectivity between the two sides of sharing. Clear everyone? So basically we see the four different types of we can say that a communication model in this, like first is the request response communication model. Here the same concept is applicable based on the request and response from client and server. Here there is no brokerage is there, means the client and server directly communicate each other. Publish and communication basically work as a broker based concept that I already explained what exactly the concept of broker is, to connect the people or buyer and seller. Similarly, the publisher and a subscriber, or we can say that the publisher and consumer, broker is play a main role. After that, the push pull communication. Here we are talking about one queue, one buffer element. Means the push means publisher push the data and client are generally push the data, as you can see. Fine. The next one queue means it's all about the buffer management. This is the temporary storage of data. Then exclusive pair communication model. In terms of the exclusive pair communication model, it's a bidirectional way and fully duplex. Means whatever the communication is establishment between client and server, it's a fully connected. It's fully connected between the two parties. Fine. The client sends data to server, server respond, then exchanging some data, then send the close response or sends a close to request, then according to the server will respond to the close. So here we discuss about the four different types of communication model which play an important role in IoT. Now we discuss about the few challenges in IoT, that which type of challenges that we will face when we are talking about the IoT. So the first thing we discuss about the security, because security is playing an important role, because importance of the data is each and everywhere. Importance of your information is very good. So security is one of the main challenging in IoT. Privacy is also main task, that whatever you task do, whatever, how many people meet you, how many data you are connected, they all are the privacy reasons. You don't need to disclose or declare your data to each and everyone. It's about the privacy. Privacy is also there. Reliability is also one of the main or most challenging part, or the reliability of the product, reliability of the component, reliability of the services, each and everywhere. Resource consumption is also there, availability of the component is also there, and the fragmentation is also there. Fragmentation is one of the new word which play ability or you can say that the services to a consumer side. It's all about the services side. So basically here you can see that we discuss about the 5 most important challenges when you designing any IoT product or when you want to sell any IoT product. See, right now here we discuss only the few topics or few challenges in the IoT, but when you start to develop any type of the challenges or any type of a product from scratch, then it plays a very important role. Then this type of the challenges are very crucial or very critical when you try to implement. Fine. So I hope that you are getting the challenges and communication model. So I hope that you are getting the idea of what exactly I am trying to convey in this session. In this session, we cover the communication model. Like we discuss the 4 different types of communication model that play an important role in IoT. So which type of communication model you can choose anyone as per your requirement and as per your application. And also we will discuss challenges in IoT. That which type of challenges you face when you designing any product in IoT. So I hope that you are getting the idea what exactly challenges in IoT is and communication model is. Still, if you have any doubt which is related to a communication model and also which is related to a challenge, then you can feel free to ask. So thank you for watching.